Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Hey everybody, we're back. I'm AJ, sitting across from me, Jason. We are the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses the things that schools may not have prepared you for. Jason, how you doing today?
Living the dream, AJ, as always.
Living the dream. How's your week been?
Oh, pretty good. You know, school's hot and heavy right now. Got a lot to do, so everything's been busy. But other than that, no complaints, right?
I have been living off of all the stuff that we've been talking to the listeners about in terms of the tips and tricks to note-taking and studying with me going back to school. And boy, have I missed stuff when I was in undergrad that really has helped me out a lot with it, especially the note-taking. Like I'm taking my time. I'm writing my notes out for every chapter. I highlight through the book so I can I'm actually doing something that's completely opposite of what I did when I was in undergrad and master's programs. And it is helping, so that it at least is working for me.
Good man. You're putting it to practice, right?
47 hours a week of it.
You're sample testing our content. I like it.
Oh, man. Well, today we decided we're going to have a little bit of a fun topic to talk about, which is parties, hookups, and dating in college. It's there. It happens.
I've seen it.
I've experienced. No. So does that sound good to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. This will be a good one. This will be
a lot of fun.
Well, before we jump in, I want to remind everybody, please visit our website. Check us out on the social media handles. Our website is Reschool'd.com. That's Reschool with a D, not an ED. On the social media handles, we are Reschool'd Pod. All right. And of course, your favorite podcasting app. Check us out there, like us, get notifications when we post new episodes. If you dig what we're doing, please, give us that 5-star review. That means a lot to us. And also check us out on YouTube, right? The little mini things that we talk about on there that, we talk about in a little more depth during our episode stuff, but really targeted answers to some specific questions. You'll get some value out of that, I hope.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little behind the scenes or an after hours part of our episodes. We'll take a little bit of what we talked about in the episodes and just kind of extend on a little bit. But not only that, you also get to see our glorious faces.
I know. You get to see, how the sausage gets made.
Yeah.
Some behind the scenes stuff.
You'll see why people say I have a face for podcasting. So, well, let's get into our quick question. And this is going back to grading yourself. So grade yourself on your partying experience in your college years.
During college years, I'd say C+ at best, right? I was not a big partier during that time, and my experiences, even later on when I got to do a little bit of it, were not that awesome. So, yeah, I'm going C+ on mine.
Yeah, I was probably going to go with C+ or B-, one of the two, because I wasn't a huge partier. I went to parties, and I enjoyed going to parties. I wasn't the typical partier, though. I didn't drink a whole lot. I didn't do the normal stuff that you would imagine would be in parties. That wasn't my style because I have just a natural personality of just wanting to have fun anyway. So I didn't need those kind of things, or I didn't feel like I needed those kind of things. So I enjoyed it without it. So, but I did go to parties and various types of parties too. So I'd give myself probably a B-. I could have done more in the participation of different college event parties, and same thing with fraternity and sorority parties and stuff, but I had fun. That's all that mattered.
See, I might have to qualify my answer. If you're giving yourself a B-, C+, I might have to give myself a D-.
I was doing the same thing when you said C+. I was thinking, golly, I was about to give myself a C. I thought I figured it'd be a little bit higher.
You'd put me in the basement then, right? I mean, so me, I went to college and I was just so disciplined at first. And, I went to bed every night at 10:55 on the dot. And I woke up every morning at 6:45 on the nose, whether I had an alarm or not, right? That was mechanical. So anything that threw me off, I didn't do a whole lot of, particularly that first year or two of partying and stuff like that. But, I did go to my fair share of parties and different types and things like that. I had some real partiers as roommates and things like that. So I was in a unique scenario there. I got to see all sides of it. So.
Well, let's get into the main topic, because I'm pretty sure we're going to embellish a little bit more on that quick question as we go through maybe the types of parties that we're talking about. So let's get into that. Let's talk about some types of parties and situations that college students can see or experience while they're in college. because that'll kind of open the door to understanding what we mean by parties. It's not always just fraternity parties or sorority parties, although those are types of parties. But there are other kind of things too. There's other kind of gatherings, parties that are outside of that scope. So can you give me a few of them?
Yeah, and everybody's seen Animal House, right? Everybody thinks
Toga,
the crazy,
toga.
yeah, toga, right? The crazy wild, throwdowns, at debauchery, whatnot.
Granted, those are
And
fun.
that exists, right? Those exist, right? They're fun, particularly if you go to a school that's more prone to partying and stuff like that. But I mean, there are tons of scenarios for parties. There are parties where you don't have the straight out just tons of drinking, everybody falling out, the keg parties type thing. Sometimes you just have the honestly stuff related to your interest in being at school. That stuff turns into a party. There are tons of clubs and organizations on campus that throw parties that, I mean, if you were going to expand the definition, you'd say like every chill session where you sit around and just listening to music, doing whatever, right? Just chilling out. It could be, folks getting together and just hanging out, watching some sports on TV or watching, a movie might be too chill to call it a party, but the thing of just throwing out some snacks and stuff and everybody getting together to watch the football game or the soccer match or whatever you're into type scenario. So, I would say you would start on the side of, all right, let's roll downhill. All right. Fraternity party, crazy debauchery, all that kind of stuff, tons of drinking, keg party, all that kind of stuff, the type of thing where the cops are going to visit 2 or 3 times. You step down a little bit and say a little lower scale type thing, the house party,
Yep.
right? Where people are just throwing, probably going to be still a good bit of drinking and stuff like that, but it's more of a walk up type scenario. Everybody hanging out. It's like a micro of the big throwdown that you'll see at some of these fraternity or sorority.
A lot of those too are spur of the moment too. Like, let's just invite some people over and have a gathering. It turns into a party.
Yeah. And and it could go either direction. It could be more of a chill type party, or it could be more of a let's get wild, let's do some things, right?
People drunk out on the lawn.
Absolutely. And then I'd say stepping it down from there is just the more chill session, or just everybody getting together to watch the game or to sit around and listen to some music, or you always got that ominous threat of the person picking up the guitar from the corner and doing
Playing Freebird.
Yeah, right. Just a little something I've been working on, right? That type of scenario, right? And then all the way down to your more formalized stuff of, all right, we got a group, we're part of, this club, this organization, we're having our members together. We're just going to have food, snacks out, maybe, but likely not have alcohol and stuff, because oftentimes those are funded some way by the club and stuff like that. So the drinking and debauchery and all that mess doesn't happen. So anyway, I would say that's the full gamut of what you're going to see and what you're going to expect, because all of those are going to be present to some extent, unless you go to a really, buttoned up type university, right? Type scenario. And then you're going to have a lot less of that fraternity, sorority, large scale shindig.
Yeah, and I'll say one of the parties that, and I again, I'm using parties loosely because I look at it as just a larger gathering. And one of the things that we did quite often when I was in undergrad is we had a lot of poker nights where a bunch of people would come into the house and play poker, and we would play it till 3, 4 in the morning, and we would have just long games playing. So, and that actually, when I started getting into that took away from obviously going into fraternity parties and stuff, because it was just a group of people that we got together, and this is just kind of how we spent. We had fun, we were laughing, we were joking, we were either winning or losing money depending on, and so we had a lot of fun with those.
Yeah, honestly, I did the same thing. We had a poker night. It was mostly dudes, but I grouped that right in there with that whole chill session of either watching sports or music, or doing something like playing poker.
Well, that kind of spurs on another question, which is, and I think you kind of alluded to it a little bit. We can talk about some of the pros and cons to it as well, but do all parties have to have alcohol?
Oh, definitely not. I mean, not if you go with our broad definition. But I will say this. If you go to the traditional thought of a party, house party, fraternity party, that type of thing, there's going to be alcohol. I'd say in college, you tend to see a lot more of your keg type parties.
Yep.
Things like that.
Keggers.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have, the can beer type scenario, glass bottle beer type scenario, but mostly keg parties and stuff like that. When you have fewer people, lower scale, you get more of the everybody just brings a 6-pack or 12-pack over, or people do that type thing. When you first get to college, you're going to be underage, right?
Yep.
So there's obviously somebody older that's bringing this stuff, but it is there, right? I'd say on the drug side, there's a lot more weed going to be present than anything else. And if you start seeing the harder stuff, we've got a whole episode on how to keep yourself out of trouble and drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. So anyway, watch our episode on that if you want to hear more about that. But that type of thing's going to be present too at your bigger parties.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you're going to have the fraternity parties and sorority parties are probably going to have the kegs or the beer of some sort, especially if you got a really good highfalutin fraternity or sorority, they're going to have the good beer. If you've got one that's just trying to save money and they may have 3 kegs, you're probably going to go with the Natty Lights or the PBRs.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you go to the Milwaukee's Best, the Beast. Yeah.
Well, no, you have hit the good fraternity and sororities when they break out the boxed wine.
Oh, yeah. There you go. That's hilarious.
So that's going to bring a long morning, though.
So, and, on the liquor side, usually all you see is shots.
Yep.
I don't see a whole lot of mixed drinks being made at these type things. And I will tell you this.
I usually mix drinks, but I wasn't a big beer fan anyway. So,
but if you go to a party and you see a punch bowl that supposedly has alcohol in it,
you better believe it's got something in it.
Yeah, do not honestly steer clear of that. That is a good way to get yourself into bad trouble. Yeah. People spike those things with things you wouldn't believe. And granted, I went to quite a few, and I drank a lot of PJ, or what they used to call way back in the day, Purple Jesus. Right? That's our parents' language, that we lost the name Purple Jesus, and now it's back to PJ, but it's just a bunch of fruit and like a pure grain alcohol like Everclear or something like that, and they tend to mix it up.
That's Hunch Punch.
Well, yeah, right. It's Hunch Punch, right? But they mix it up in tubs and got fruit floating in it and stuff. If you ever see anybody mix it up in the bathroom, do not drink that. Do not drink that. I am begging you. They can't clean that bathtub enough for that to be okay.
Oh man, right? I've never seen that one before.
Oh, I've seen it. I have seen it. Oh, that is disgusting. But that being said, right? So, that's the type of stuff you're going to see there. So, but is it always necessary to have alcohol? Not at the lower level shindigs. The bigger shindigs, they're going to have them. I mean, and when the keg gets tapped, people start leaving. Yeah. That is like the signal. When you run out of beer, everybody starts leaving. I don't know why it's become such a culture in the U.S. that you got to have the alcohol to have a good time and drink and stuff like that, but it's there. You
mean when the keg gets floated, right?
Right. Or you kick the keg.
Yeah. So I guess the better question, because I mean, the original question was, do all parties include alcohol? Do they have alcohol? I guess maybe the better question is, do you have to partake in alcohol at all parties?
I would say no. I mean, a lot of people are going to be doing that. And granted, they have a lot of fun. They also get sick. They also,
buddy.
Hug the toilet, right? Pray to that porcelain pot at the end of the night.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fun to be had there. A lot of consequences to be paid if you don't do it responsibly. Ton of risk that comes along with it, because that's how you drop your inhibitions, right? Type scenario, and people end up doing things that otherwise they would not do. And when they regain mental competency, they sometimes regret seriously the things they did. Sometimes,
sometimes they can't regret it because they can't remember it.
Yeah, right. But the thing is, it tends to stick with you, right? There's a reality out there now that cell phones exist. Everyone has a camera on it, and people record that stuff, and people remember that stuff, and people talk about that stuff. So it's dangerous now, right? Everything you do that used to be, always fleeting, spur of the moment type stuff, all of a sudden that becomes the way people see you. That's part of the personality that they see as being making up who you are and stuff. And I've seen people that did stuff that ultimately couldn't live it down for years and were embarrassed about it. And it changed their whole life. It changed their whole personality because they did stuff where their inhibitions dropped And, that stuff doesn't go away. And that's a sad scenario, right? It materially affected their lives because, once again, they did stuff that otherwise is not consistent with their personality.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point, and that is cell phones with cameras on them
Mhm.
are so predominant now to where everything is going to be recorded to some capacity, and a lot of times it's going to be taken out of context too.
Yeah.
So depending, I mean, you can do stupid stuff that doesn't need context. I get that, but there's other things that can be taken out of context. So you have to really be careful now, because back when I was in college, we didn't have the cell phone cameras. And so a lot of all the stupid stuff that I did was not recorded. Thank God.
Oh, yeah.
But today, I mean, everyone has them, and they're in their pocket.
I know. And like I say, it becomes a part of who you are. You can't change from that. You can't live it down among those same people, because people live in sound bites, right? Sometimes people's
Mhm.
first introduction to you is something that is not you. And so anyway, it's just something to be cautious of and careful of. Alcohol is going to be there, right? We've talked about that, and we have a whole scenario on being responsible around it and the realities of it and the dangers of it and things like that. But just being aware of that one, to know what to expect so you can go into it prepared for, one of the biggest things that we talk about is, having a friend with you, that type of thing. And so, can you take part in partying in college without drinking? You sure can, right? I do say it helps when you have a personality like you, right? Very fun loving, that type of thing, where you don't need to be intoxicated to let your hair down, as they say, right?
If I had hair.
Yeah, if you had hair anymore, right? You got plenty on that beard, right? You just migrated it, right?
Yeah, I'll let my beard hair down.
So, but when you can do that, I tended to be more of an uptight person, right? I was always planned, always measured, always thinking about what was coming next. So sometimes it was necessary for me to drink more to have a good time in the way that other people were there, right? Because I just tend to be more on the serious side. But that being said, okay, as long as you understand that, use it responsibly, understand what you're doing, prepare for it ahead of time, you'll be good.
Well, the next step, I guess, away from partying is a lot of times parties tend to create hookups or give you the ability to find hookups. And so let's talk about that for a moment. What exactly do we mean by hookups? And this should be really interesting.
Yeah, right. Well, that whole definition is a little different these days than it used to be. Hookups, I think, now, as much as anything, a couple gets together and they start showing affection towards each other in private, right?
That's the most politically correct way of saying
right.
What a hookup is ever.
How far it goes, right, is up to the person and whatever you feel comfortable with. And, hopefully it's not one of those scenarios where inhibitions go down so far that you do things that you otherwise wouldn't want to do and are embarrassed of, or somehow feel taken advantage of type scenario because of that, right? We've talked about that in other episodes and we've seen that before. But in terms of what it is, it's just that, two people get together and show affection. These dating apps, right, that exist now, they exist because they break down these barriers, our self-consciousness, right, our inhibition of talking to somebody else, our inability to get past the guards that we throw up to protect ourselves from embarrassment, from, being taken advantage of. On the girl side, it's probably being hit on more than anything else. With guys, it's trying to get away from the fear of rejection type thing. So it breaks down those barriers and it allows that in a simple way. You can start the conversation. You can, you can at least meet somebody and get a sense of how they feel without being so intimidated or so scared. Well, alcohol, in a way, does that for people, right? They're no longer embarrassed. They're no longer as self-conscious, that type of thing. So again, it allows people to socialize a little easier and stuff. But, like I say, overdone or taken too far, you get yourself in a really bad position.
Yeah, you mentioned something that really hit home with me, because when I was going through college, and honestly, I don't need it today because I'm married, but when I was going through college, when I was even in high school, like I love being in front of everyone. I didn't have a problem. I wasn't embarrassed. It was really hard to get me embarrassed during different things. But when it came to approaching a girl that I'd never talked to and I had no connection with whatsoever. Like we'd not previously met, or I didn't have an introduction. Somebody introduced me to her, but me just approaching her almost like a cold call kind of thing, that was as far away from my personality as you could possibly get. Like that the idea of it terrified me. And so parties, I never approached girls that I'd never talked to before. I usually, if there was somebody I knew, then I would go talk to them. But it was never me, oh, look, there's a, attractive girl in the corner or attractive girl on the dance floor. I'm going to go, I guess you would say, hit on her. Or just that's not me. I could not do it. It scared me to death. And maybe because like you said, maybe it's just the thought of rejection.
Yeah, I was terrible at it too. I mean, it's the exact same way. Self-consciousness. I was not good at all at hitting on women. I mean,
yeah.
Never could. I honestly, yeah, quite frankly, the reason I'm married today is because my wife hit on me. Right. Tight scenario. It just wasn't, not to be conceited, but back in college, I was a pretty decent looking guy. Right. So I did, have women that would come up and talk to me oftentimes type scenario. But I was so serious. I was so, dedicated to what I did. I honestly didn't have that great of a personality build up yet and stuff. So I was not at all what you would call successful with the ladies in that way.
So I was on the other side. I had the personality. I just didn't have them come hitting on me.
No, I just, like I said, and I think it was, my background, what I was coming from. I was so serious about being successful. I was so serious and dedicated towards time. I couldn't bring myself to say, I'd have to sacrifice the time from studying because studying was my number one. I'd have to sacrifice the time from, learning, right? I became so infatuated with learning the things I was interested in, as much outside of class as in. It even affected the people I hung around and stuff. I mean, I made everything I could into a learning experience, particularly about culture and language type thing, that type of thing. And I just couldn't get away from that serious attitude, So lots of times the drinking helped me a lot, break down those barriers. So I could just talk about things that honestly I didn't care about, like just the daily, the trivial, that type of thing. So I didn't find a lot of people. I still haven't in my life found a lot of people who are similar to me. In how I am and my interests and stuff like that. I'm still a very obsessive person about the things I'm interested in. And it was very difficult to find somebody like that in college. So again,
sure.
Going to the parties and stuff just wasn't the scenario or the scene where, I thrived.
You're talking about finding somebody that was more or less as obsessive about and focused on things as you were. Is your wife that way?
No. So
you found your opposite.
Yeah. Well, she's not my opposite. Well, I guess in many ways she is. I was so focused in certain ways on learning, on accomplishing something, on not being what I was always expected to be before, that type of thing, And she was extremely fun-loving, extremely gregarious. She could speak with anybody. She could get along with anybody, right? Talk to a wall. She had lots of boyfriends and lots of friends and connections and things like that. So she didn't need me to be the personality in the scenario. Yeah. She actually found interesting, I believe, me and how I was, right? My interest in things, my deep dedication to things like, learning and specific experience, that type of thing. She valued that. And I and her valued, again, how bubbly she was, how open she was to so much and everything like that. And she wanted to, she had a lot of interest in the same way I did, travel, right? Her travel, idea was, very similar and aligned in that way, type scenario. So honestly, she helped me expand as a person, as much as anything. And I think that's why we hit it off so well, right? I always felt like with her, I was still going down that road I wanted to pursue.
It's interesting because it sounds like you and your wife are exactly the same as my wife and I, but opposites. my wife was the one that was super focused. She was all about grades. She was very disciplined in work and school and family. And she pretty much told me, after we dated for a while, she said she was content with it just being her. And like I said, she had a son, so I have a stepson. She was very content with it just being them two. And that was it. She wasn't looking for anybody. She wasn't trying to find a husband or a boyfriend at the time. She was just content with where she was at. And that dedication, that family, the work dedication, the school dedication, it put all of her focus on those things. And she was the one that was not able to let loose. She struggled with the ability to just calm down and take life as it comes. Me, on the other hand, I was definitely not that by any stretch of the imagination. And we met in college. So this kind of goes into the topic of dating too. In college, we met because she was in one of my classes. And by the way, let me start off by giving you let me paint the picture for you. We had a class together. I think it was statistics class, and I sat kind of towards the back naturally because I was an idiot and didn't care. She sat towards the front, and she always looked at her as, have you ever seen those girls where you look at them and you go, there's no way this person will ever talk to me. They're so far out of my league. It's not even funny.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So she was that person for me. Like there was other girls that we were talking to in the class, but she was the one that was so far, I'm like, not even a chance. And a lot of the guys were the same way. And, we were one day, I can't remember what day it was, but we get to campus the same day, and we end up walking together into our class. I've never talked to this girl before, but we walked together, and I opened the door for her. And as she was walking in, my mom always told me, when a lady walks through a door, when you open the door and a lady walks through it, guide her in with your hand. Just put your hand on the small of her back, not too low to be an idiot, but not too high. You just want to put it on the small of her back and just guide her in, as to show that she can be comfortable with you. And I thought, that would never work. Well, I did that with her, and we struck up a conversation, and our class got canceled that day. So we were there, and we get to the door, and it says, hey, class is canceled. Because we didn't have these things of like text messages telling us, hey, class is canceled. You actually had to show up to class to figure out your class was canceled. So our class got canceled, and we struck up a conversation, and we started talking about this movie, and I was like, well, we should go see it. And she was like, oh, that sounds good. And I was the most informal thing I've ever done. I was like, we should just go see it. And she was like, oh, okay, cool. And later, I didn't know that she went back to her work and tried to figure out how to get out of that date. But persistence works. So we ended up getting married. It was fine. But she saw me as somebody that didn't have any focus on academics, and that's why she didn't think of me as a potential suitor for her, and that's why she was trying to get out, is because I was, and pretty much spot on, I was more immature. That's the thing that I think I was attracted more about her by her maturity. Her maturity really gave me something that's, okay, that could be the complement of what I needed in a relationship. And she, I guess, quickly found out after the first date, because she couldn't get out of it, after the first date, that my fun-loving kind of personality allowed her to relax a little bit and have more fun. And so then we started hitting it off. I mean, it actually went pretty quick too in our relationship as well. So that was our story.
I think that's kind of a scenario for a lot of people, not the specific scenario, but that you have people who are different in so many ways, but there's something that kind of brings them together, right? There's some compatible aspect, right? That still there's a core interest or thing about it, that kind of completes you type scenario.
Yeah.
And but as far as the hookup thing, I guess what we need to get back to is it can mean something or it cannot. I'd say more often than not, it's a probing, trying process where it doesn't mean much. But I think you have to understand ahead of time, or you have to do the math as to what it could mean, right? Yeah. Is it going to be something that you're embarrassed about, right? Because that's not what you want, right? That's something for it to be a negative experience that stays with you type scenario, right? So to avoid that and prepare ahead of time, right? To say,
Yeah.
what does this mean, type scenario? Because a hookup by its very nature, if you did the math and said, how many of these end up being a person you want to spend more time with, type scenario, in college, I think you're going to see that a lot of hookups are one-time affairs that create more a level of awkwardness
Yeah, buddy.
or embarrassment than anything else, type scenario.
Well, as we alluded to, parties kind of lead to hookups. Hookups sometimes, hopefully, lead to dating. So let's get into the dating aspect of it. And really, when we're talking about the dating, I think we all know what dating is. So let's skip over the definition of dating. Let's get into really the pros and cons of dating in college. I mean, because, like I said, I met my wife in college because we were dating. And that was the best decision I've ever made. So what were some pros and cons for that?
So to start with, the whole dating thing, right? I mean, dating is just over a period of time continuing to go out with somebody, right?
Yeah.
And at some point you make it exclusive so you don't go out with anybody else.
I was about to say, so so there's these terms now. So you have people that you're talking to, which is apparently the first stage of dating, which talking to just means you talk to them and you may go on some dates, but you can apparently go see other people.
My understanding is that there is not a formal commitment yet.
Okay. So when I thought I was dating somebody, I turned exclusive. I didn't think about dating other people, but apparently there's that stage where I just completely pole vaulted over that stage.
Well, I think the idea is this: if you say you're talking to somebody, that kind of entails that if you're serious about it, you kind of check in that period to see, is the other person looking to see other people. Right.
Yeah.
If, I think most people go immediately towards, all right, we're just talking, but they are focusing on each other. Right. There's an exclusion of others. And I think that talking stops if one person steps out and starts looking for somebody else, type scenario, or prior conversations continue and stuff like that. And I will say this, I think some of that happens in secret or in private. Some of that continuing to talk to other people continues on. Unfortunately, sometimes that continuing to talk to somebody continues on even when you are dating and have a relationship. And if the other person finds out, that is that is oftentimes
that's a bad thing.
Tragic or the end to your dating scenario, right? Because I think most of the time dating entails some level of monogamy type scenario. And even if you aren't, say, doing things physically with somebody else, just the emotional aspect of reliving what you shared and things like that with somebody else can be pretty rough. So so I think, the stage of dating is where you get to some level of monogamy and some level of commitment to that person. So,
there are plenty of pros and cons to dating in college. And obviously, like I said, the pro is you potentially are meeting your future spouse. And if you're dating, and this is probably one of the biggest things I learned, because I was dating a girl when I was going into college, and it was a long-term relationship, and we ended up breaking up. But I know there's a lot of breakups, and a lot of people, so that's the emotional toll that it takes. That obviously is a con if you break up. But there's a plus side, there's a pro to breaking up in a relationship. At least it was for me, depending on how you look at it, because I appreciated the time I had with my ex, because it allowed me to know, one, we weren't compatible with each other, and we both knew that. That's why we broke up. And I'll say it out. She broke up with me. I was cool. But it allowed me to go back and see, okay, here are the qualities that I put priority on when it comes to my next girlfriend. Or next, potential wife. Obviously when you're in college, that tends to what you're dating for, is you're dating for the purpose of marriage, hopefully one day. At least it was for me. So I was able to identify certain qualities, and certain qualities she had that my ex had, that I thought, okay, these are really qualities I really want to look for. There were certain qualities that she had that I didn't want in my next suitor. And so it allowed me to kind of focus in on what I was truly wanting. And that's kind of how I see dating, is you're going to date multiple people throughout your life. Most people are. Some people date from high school and then get married to their high school sweetheart, which is cool. Mm-hmm. But for those who have other boyfriends or girlfriends or whatnot, it allows you to see kind of what you want in the ultimate end, which is the spouse. And so I'm all for dating and just kind of getting to know, one, who you are, and then two, who you're looking for.
Right. And, that's, I think, the difference between hookups and dating. Hookups
Yep.
are either a testing ground, or I think for a lot of dudes, particularly satisfying a particular want or need in the moment type scenario. Dating is where you make that transition and go a little bit deeper and establish something. But pluses and minuses, the pluses mainly revolve around that, right? You now have a partner. You now have somebody to confide in. You now have the emotional support of what happens in your life matters to them. So they're going to be on your side, right? They're going to be your friend, your confidant, your person that commiserates with you, the person that takes on challenges with you and stuff like that. So having somebody by your side really expands, and I could never see that when I was younger in school. Like, I never thought I could find somebody who would take some of the load off. Everyone I ever met or ever even thought about getting involved with always seemed like they would just be an addition to something I had to do. It would be more effort and work for me rather than a reduction. And I'm not gonna lie, even when I met my wife, it felt like that for a long time. It felt like I was in law school, right? I was trying to take the bar, I was getting close to graduating. I was trying to take the bar exam. I was already signed up to go into the Army. My objective was to go overseas. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see things. I was even considering, various other aspects of things I wanted to do in life. And honestly, my holdback from committing fully or being 100% all in to start with was like, how can I fit this in my life, right? And so, to the extent that you can get to that point that you are sharing, that it is a part that this person expands who you are, but also takes something off of you, right? You're not longing for something. You're not wanting something anymore. Those are the advantages, right?
I want to go a little off script because we have things that we'd like to talk about with the pluses and minuses, like the time and attention it takes to be in a committed relationship, a dating relationship, the companionship that you get from it, the emotional support that you're going to get from it, the distractions and the emotions that can come from it, especially if you're breaking up. Those are things that I think we're pretty all aware of, especially if you've dated before. But I want to kind of go on a tangent here. I want to get your opinion. This maybe is a little deeper. Maybe some people may not like this, but I want to get your opinion on this because I think this is something as we both have girls, we both have daughters, and I have a stepson. I have a son. I call him my son. I have a son who is coming up on 17, so he's in that dating world right now where he's just learning about it and everything. He just got out of his relationship with his ex-girlfriend now, and he was enjoying it. He likes the dating aspect of it, but there's this mentality when it comes to money, when dealing with dating, and I think there's this belief for some people. Not all people are like this, but there's this feeling of the male is responsible for paying everything on a date for the counterpart. What do you think about that?
It is still a stereotype that's the way that goes down. And honestly, that is, unless you have, a couple that comes together with the same mentality of that is not how it's supposed to go down, then again, it's probably going to be the reality. That was a huge hurdle for me. I was always so short of money throughout early in my life. So when I started working so much, I had money. And to have a few $1,000s in the bank in college was a huge deal for me. And I kept...
1,000? That's... Yeah. I had two less zeros.
I saved. I was a penny pincher, right? I saved everything just because I was always saving for something. I wanted to study abroad next. I wanted to travel. I wanted to do those things. I always was saving up for an item. I had a kayak, a whitewater kayak that I played in the ocean with. I had a road bike that I used. I mean, those things were things that I wanted. I saved up for, and I needed that level of security. Where I saw so many of the people I was around that, honestly, whether they never wanted for or never lacked or were accustomed to not having, right? I was so ingrained in I need to have that level of security. The only way I'm ever going to have the things that I do want is if I do that. And, honestly, I was not that into paying for the
Yeah.
dating experience when it was so hard to find somebody I was looking for anyway. And I did try, right, going out with different types of girls, go out on a date or two type scenario. And it just, again, I didn't feel a connection, didn't feel those things. And honestly, one of the primary motivators not to keep on, taking swings at the plate was with the same person. I mean, I guess,
Yeah.
was that I don't see this working out. I'm not going to invest, one, the time that I don't have, and
Yeah.
two, the resources that I valued so much. I wasn't going to spend all that money and stuff trying to create something that I didn't see as working from moment one type scenario. So
I will say my relationship when we were dating, I think that was the one moment where I realized that this person could be the one, is when we would go out on dates and her expectation was she was going to pay for herself. And it wasn't like, it wasn't an argument. It was just, she had hers. She said she could cover hers. And it was never like, hey, can you cover yours? Or we're going Dutch or anything like that. But she would be the one that would come up with and say, we'll just do it separately. I'll pay for mine. And when she said that, it gave me this understanding that she didn't care about the monetary things. It was just the time that we spent together. And I fully intended to go, and I did pay for a lot of those. I wasn't going to let her spend the money on the date when I was the one that asked her out on a date. But her letting me know that she wasn't expecting it really showed me a lot about where her mind was. And again, it kind of goes back in that maturity thing too. And that's kind of what I tell my son. I tell him, you need to fully intend on paying for the date if you ask the girl out on a date. But it's really nice when the girl, for his situation, when the girl says, oh, I've got my own. Then you can tell her, no, I've got it. I invited you to this. This is my treat kind of thing. That's kind of how I grew up. But it's just really nice to hear that on the other side that they don't expect it.
Yep, I can tell you from the same point of view as you came from, that would have been a wonderful thing for me, right? I mean, I think that would have been. I've been like, all right, well, maybe this girl does have her head in the same place that I do, right? Type thing,
Yeah.
I did find out pretty early, often, that somebody as intense as I am, even though you look for somebody you think is going to fit that way, we'd end up killing each other, right? There's too much strong will, sometimes in the same direction, or sometimes in the same way, but if you have different directions, you both get really, really mad, right? Type scenario. So, yeah. But no, I did not find that, and for those of you out there, that stereotype still exists, right? The guy's going to be kind of expected to cover the type thing. So
question, and we can end it here too, but maybe this will help some people out there. How much emphasis did you put on the first date?
Well, for me, it was everything. I mean,
I put everything I had in the first date.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go any further really if I didn't. I mean, I can count on one hand all the times that I went past at least a second date anyway, just because I was like, nah, I'm not feeling it. So this isn't gonna work.
Well, how much effort did you put into setting up the first date?
That's a good question. So I was so inexperienced about it and stuff, and I was so focused on somebody wanting to, be into it the same way I was, that wanted to, I was very much, I didn't realize then that the things that make somebody have fun or a good time, like the reason guys that have money do so well in college, even if they're not the best looking or they're that type of thing, it's the lifestyle that they create, right? It is fun to be able to do things. I mean, it is fun to go out and enjoy nice meals or go to nice parties or to have nice clothes and to look well and look good and stuff like that. And see, I was of the mentality that none of that stuff should matter, right? You should like each other, and that should be the focus type scenario. You shouldn't have to spend money on things. And so I did not dress very well, right? I did not do those things. And like like I said, I was very fit and that type of thing. And girls tended to be attracted to me more just on the looks type scenario, but that faded very quickly when they realized I didn't have a fun, jovial personality that made everything more worth it, and I certainly didn't have money and things like that to have the experiences or the wide group of friends that partied, and I wasn't able to make life fun for people. Right. It had to be somebody who was just serious like me, type scenario. So anyway, having seen that, right, I had a lot to learn about relationships and stuff like that. So anyway, I don't know. What's your take on it?
I put a lot of effort into the first date. I always kind of looked at it as the first impression.
Oh yeah.
And I remember the first date with my wife, when I asked her out, I was picking her up from her house, which she lived about 35 minutes away from me, but she was coming home from work, so I just followed her from work to her house, and she worked at an eye doctor, so she kind of had the scrubs on and everything. And I was going to take her to a nice restaurant in another town, and I mean, it wasn't too expensive restaurant, but it was just a nicer restaurant, and then she thought that was pretty much it. I had other plans, like I was going to take her somewhere else. She still thinks, I think she still thinks to this day, hopefully she's not listening to this, to this day, that it was spontaneous. But I was dressed up. So she's in her scrubs. She went home to change, but I had dress pants on and a button down. Like I went all out. And she wore jeans and a t-shirt. But after dinner, we were driving back to our town, and I was talking about me playing soccer and everything, and which was a big part of my life. And she had mentioned something about, not really being aware of soccer, not knowing too much about soccer. And on the way home, I knew we would drive right past some soccer fields. And so as we were passing them, I'd mentioned something, and we ended up, I had in the back of the car, which I guess this kind of gave it away that it wasn't really as spontaneous as I thought it was. But in the back of the car, I had a blanket and some speakers to listen to music. And I put the blanket out in the middle of the field. We walked out in the middle of the field. I put the blanket out there, and we just kind of, because it was wide open so you can see the sky. It was a night, so you see the stars and everything. And we just sat there and we talked. Like we laid on the blanket, talked about what what our interests were. It was a fun time. We listened to music. I think we got up and danced one time.
Oh wow.
And
that was pretty amazing, AJ. That was a romantic thing that you laid out there.
I had to. She tried to get out of the date the first time.
See, you went the extra mile. You did what was necessary to get past somebody's level of guardedness.
Yeah.
And that was exceptional. And honestly, I guess I was always looking for somebody who was willing to put forward the effort to get past my guardedness, type scenario. And I think probably the first person ever in my life that did was my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, man. That's been a great show. Hopefully that helps some of our listeners out in some capacity.
Yeah.
Whether it's decision on partying, hookups, or dating.
If nothing else, you hear a couple of other points of view, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great, man. Do you have any parting words before we head out?
Just same thing I say every time. Guys, you got to visit our website. Got to check us out on the social media handles, that type of thing. Shoot us a message. Let us know what you're thinking about, what you want to hear. If you like something, just let us know. If you got any victories in your life, we'll celebrate them with you, that type of thing. But anyway, connect with us. That's what we're here for.
Awesome. Well, until next time, we hope to see you there. Goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.